When you have a 15-year-old girl living in circumstances that are, what's the right word? Unorthodox? Things are going to happen that are unwanted, unexpected, and sometimes just plain upside down. That was the house on Sunset in a nutshell. Always loud, always crowded, always one bad decision away from turning into a full-blown disaster. Tess was the kind of girl who wanted to be loved so badly she would bend herself into any shape to get it. She'd smile at the wrong people, trust the wrong men, and convince herself every time that this one would be different. Her dad, Bill, he wasn't much help. He could barely manage himself from one day to the next, let alone guide a teenage daughter who was growing up way too fast in a house with no rules and even fewer boundaries. By then, I was working swing shift at the factory across town. My schedule was backwards from the rest of the world, gone most of the night, sleeping most of the day. And sleeping is a generous word. The crash house was never quiet. Night and day there were always voices, music, or the TV, doors slamming, someone arguing over cigarettes or weed or rent money. So most days I ended up at Alan's, in the old camper in the back of his parents' property. It was small and smelled faintly of motor oil, but at least it was peaceful. That afternoon, I was getting a ride from Alan to work, his car coughing and whining like it was offended to be alive. As we turned onto the street, I saw Tess on the porch. She never waited outside for anyone. Tess didn't run for buses, didn't run for boys, didn't run for anything. So seeing her bolt down the steps toward me made my stomach flip. I barely had my door open before she grabbed my hand. "Come here, right now." "You're acting like a nut," I said, half laughing, half nervous as she dragged me through the house to the little bathroom at the back. The door clicked shut behind us, and that's when I saw it on the counter. A small plastic stick. 2 faint pink lines. My brain recognized it before my heart did. "Oh no," I whispered. She nodded, eyes shiny and scared. "Oh yes." The next months blurred together like a bad dream you can't wake up from. Tessa's pregnancy wasn't the glowing, happy kind you see in movies. It was rough from the start. Sick mornings, sick afternoons, sick nights. She'd lie on the couch, pale and sweating, while the house went on around her like nothing had changed. The same men still came through. The same parties still happened. Bill acted like if he didn't talk about it, maybe it would disappear. And as for the father, no one knew. I tried to help where I could. I bought saltine crackers with my paycheck. Alan and I took her to the clinic, Alan being roped into being chauffeur when he was available. We both sat beside her while she cried about how her life was over. But I was 15 too, pretending to be older, pretending I knew anything about anything. At work, I'd stand at the machine with the noise pounding in my ears and think, there's going to be a baby in that house. A real, breathing person, and nobody in charge. When she finally went into labor, it was chaos. Bill pacing like a caged dog, Tess screaming she'd changed her mind, me trying to remember what the nurse on the hotline had said about timing contractions. The hospital lights were too bright, the air too cold. And then suddenly, there he was. Tiny, red-faced, already furious at the world. For a moment, everything felt holy and terrifying at the same time. The problem was, once the baby arrived, Tess just seemed to drift away from him. Not in a cruel way, more like she was watching someone else's life through a window. She'd hold him, then hand him back like he was a heavy coat she didn't want to wear. Bill tried, in his own clumsy fashion. He'd bounce the baby on his knee, humming old country songs. But the minute the crying started, he'd panic. That's where I came in. I'd finish swing shift exhausted, my feet throbbing, grease still under my nails, and walk into a house that smelled like formula and dirty diapers instead of beer and cigarettes. The baby would be wailing in his crib, Bill shouting from the kitchen that he couldn't get him to shut up, and Tess locked in her room pretending she couldn't hear. Some nights I didn't even take off my work jacket before scooping him up. "Hey, little man," I'd whisper, rocking back and forth. "It's okay. I've got you." I learned how to heat bottles, how to test milk on my wrist, how to fold tiny onesies that look like doll clothes. I learned the difference between a hungry cry and a tired cry. Nobody taught me. I just figured it out because somebody had to. But every hour I spent mothering that baby was an hour I wasn't sleeping, wasn't living my own life. I'd sit on the couch at 3 a.m. watching the sun threaten the curtains and think, this isn't supposed to be my story. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I'd worked a double shift because we needed the money. My whole body felt like one big bruise. When I opened the front door, the baby was screaming so hard he was hiccuping. And Bill was yelling at the television like it had personally offended him. "Can you take him?" he snapped. "I'm losing my mind here." Something in me just cracked. "I'm 15 years old," I said, my voice shaking. "He's not my kid." Bill stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. That night, I packed a grocery bag with my clothes and walked out to Alan's car. The screen door squealed behind me, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel the weight of a life that wasn't mine. Living in the camper changed everything. At first, Tess was furious. She accused me of abandoning her, of acting like I was better than them. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. All I knew was I couldn't drown just because everyone else refused to swim. Funny thing though, once I wasn't there to catch every falling plate, Tess had to stand up. Slowly, awkwardly, she began to step into being a mother. She learned how to calm him, how to laugh at his gummy smile, how to see him as more than just a mistake. Bill surprised all of us by getting serious about moving. He found a small house in another city, nothing fancy, but clean, with a real yard and a door that locked. They talked about starting fresh, like people do when the past gets too heavy to carry. The day they left town, Tess hugged me so hard I could feel her bones. "You saved us," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, we all did. We promised to write, to visit, to stay family in whatever way we could. But life has a way of stretching people until the threads get thin. Letters turned into postcards, postcards into nothing at all. Eventually, the crash house was just another address I used to know. Sometimes I think about that baby. He'd be grown now, with the whole life I never got to see. I wonder if he knows how many hands held him together in those early days, how close he came to slipping through the cracks. And I think about Tess, a scared girl who became a mother before she became an adult. I hope she found the version of herself she was always chasing. As for me, swing shift ended, the camper disappeared, and the years carried me somewhere steadier. But there are nights when I still hear a phantom cry in the dark and feel my arms rock an invisible weight. Life doesn't always hand you the role you expect. Sometimes it hands you a baby at 15 and says, "Figure it out." And somehow we did. If this story touched on anything that feels close to home for you, pregnancy, feeling alone, caring for a child before you were ready, or living in a chaotic home, you don't have to carry that by yourself. There are people who will listen without judgment and help you find real support. In the U.S., you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline 24 hours a day. For pregnancy and parenting support, you can contact Postpartum Support International at 1-800-944-4773 or text the word HELP, HELP, to 800-944-4773. If you're experiencing domestic violence or feel unsafe at home, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233 or text the word START, START, to 88788. If you're outside the U.S., please check your local healthcare services for crisis support in your country. You matter. Your story matters. And help is always closer than it feels.